Shalom, brothers and sisters. Grace, mercy, and peace be unto you from Yahuwah the Father and Yahushua our Mashiach, his voice. Hear, O Yeshua. Yahuwah, our mighty one, he is one Yahuwah. This is Brother David coming to you again to bring you the Sunrise Sabbath. This is a damnable heresy, and this is part 2. I gave homework last week. You were supposed to find any place in your book where the Most High told you to start your Sabbaths or your feast days from sunrise to sunrise or sunrise to sunset. Now, the reason that I told you to do that was so you can see how easy it is to debunk a lie. If the Most High did not tell you to do that, where did the doctrine come from? From men. But I gave you a template of what his days look like. They cannot give you a template of what their days look like. They just come from vague scriptures. And I'm going to show you that in part 3. Let's begin. Chanak, chapter 73, verses 1 to 4. Hey, Brother David, isn't the book of Chanak an apocryphatic book? Well, yes, that's what they've labeled it. The Europeans, and even some of our brothers and sisters that are reading the same commentaries. Everyone who says that reads the commentaries of the Europeans. But Brother David, they say that the book of Chanak has errors. Your whole Bible has errors. That's why you have to learn the process of translation and transliteration for yourself and check out every single word. Well, Brother David, the book of Chanak is not even in the Bible. Well, the Europeans took it out because it does not match canon. What is canon? Christian doctrine. So because of that, they kicked the book to the curb. This book is only written for you, the righteous race that would return in the last days. Verse 1. And after this law I saw another law dealing with the smaller luminary, which is called the moon. Her name is Asanya. Verse 2. And her circumference is like the circumference of the heaven, and her chariot in which she rides is driven by the wind, and light is given to her in definite measure. Hey, she doesn't have any light. The sun, or Yades, transfers its light to the moon. Verse 3. And her rising and setting change every month, and her days are like, not exactly, they're like the days of the sun. And when her light is uniform, in other words, full, it amounts to the 7th part of the light of the sun. In order for this phase to happen, you have to have a full line of sight between the moon and the sun. Verse 4. And thus she rises. We're talking about Asanya. And her first phase in the east comes forth on the 30th morning. And on that day she becomes visible. Isn't that what you're looking for? You have to see something, correct? The ancients, they had to stay out and watch for the change, for the renewal. The 30th day is dark. That's your dark moon day. But it tells you that it comes forth on the 30th morning, and that day she becomes visible, and it constitutes for you the first phase of the moon on the 30th day together with the sun in the portal where the sun rises. So you're going to see her on the 30th day in the evening. Verse 5. Here's what she looks like. And 1/2 of her goes forth by a 7th part. And her whole circumference is empty, without light, with the exception of 1/7 part of it and the 14th part of her light. That's the slither of light, brothers and sisters. Did it tell you the first phase? First phase means beginning of the month. Doesn't this kill the full moon theory? Verse 6. And when she receives 1/7 part of the half of her light amounts to the 1/7 part and the half thereof. Verse 7. And she sets with the sun. And when the sun rises, the moon rises with him, and receives the half of 1 part of light, and in that night, in the beginning of her morning, stop. Did you hear that? All of us who go out to spot her, and you should go out yourself, I believe it's this Thursday evening. All of us who have spotted her knows what this looks like. You know what it looks like? You know the intro picture that I showed you of sunrise? It looks like that. But it's in the evening. And that's when she shows up. Because the evening is the beginning of her morning. Yahuwah's time is not men's time. If you follow men, you will not be on his time. Listen what they put in parentheses. This is not a part of Scripture. They just put this in so that you will understand. In the commencement of the lunar day. When does the lunar day start? In the evening. Look, and then the moon sets with the sun. She's only visible for a couple of minutes. All of us who've been out there to see her, we know this. And is invisible that night with the 14 parts and the half of 1 of them. You will not see her no more that night. The sky will be black. Verse 8. And she rises on that day. That's at sunrise. With exactly a 7th part. And comes forth and recedes from the rising of the sun, and in her remaining days she becomes bright in the remaining 13 parts. Every day that you go out to see her after day 1, she's going to come in a little later every night, until she goes back to the eastern portal and joins with the sun. And that's in 13 parts, or 13 more days. Her light becomes full in 14 days and begins to wane in day 15. Do you understand? Parts equal days. Do you think they know this? Okay. So they may say something like this. That's apocryphal. So what? I've gone out, and I hope you have gone out to prove everything that Chanak has to say. Took me a few years to do so. But this is absolute perfection. Just so you can get a understanding of what I'm trying to tell you. I'll show you this chart from Moon Giant. Remember, this is the moon. The moon rules over what? The night, correct? All right, look at January 12th. This is called the waning crescent. Illumination 1%. This is your end of the month. Look what side it's on. It's on the left side. What time will you see this if you were looking for it? Maybe about 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. If the sky is clear, it'll come up right before the sun fully rises, and it'll look just like the new moon in the evening. Then the sun comes up. Let's place the sun between January 12th and January 13th. So the sun comes up and the moon joins with the sun. Here you have what they call the conjunction. It's like an eclipse or a blackout. And then the evening comes and she's dark. And in this evening of January 13th is when she's going to first receive her light. When the sun rises, let's put another sun between the 13th and the 14th. When the sun rises, she receives that 1/2 of a 7th part of light, but she's riding too close to the sun. And then when the sun dips below the horizon, January 14th, the waxing crescent 2% becomes visible. And she's only there for a few minutes. And that's the beginning of your lunar morning. Isn't that amazing? Everything is playing out in the sky. The astronomers know. Your enemies know. Guess who don't know? The children that it was created for. And this is what she looks like. Very early in the morning before the sun rises. She's getting the reflection from the earth. And when the sun rises, she receives that 1/2 of a 7th part of light. And she rides with the sun till the evening, and then she becomes visible. New moon, Wikipedia. Remember something. If you got it right, every single place that you go, it will line up. In astronomy, the new moon is the first lunar phase, when the moon and the sun have the same ecliptic longitude. That's the dark moon. That's when it's in the conjunction. At this phase, the lunar disk is not visible to the unaided eye. You see that? The ancient people, Yasharal, they didn't have astronomical equipment or telescopes. They had to see it with the naked eye. So it's not the dark moon that they were looking for, except when silhouetted during a solar eclipse. Daylight outshines the earth light that dimly illuminates the new moon. The actual phase is usually a very thin crescent. Look, it says see note 2. Okay, come down. The original meaning of the term new moon, which is still sometimes used in non-astronomical context, okay, they're talking about us. This is the original term for the new moon. Not the dark moon, but this is the original term that is used in non-astronomical context. In other words, your book. They're coming from Chanak. They know this, but you don't, and they want to keep it from you. Is the first visible crescent of the moon after the conjunction with the sun. It's the slither of light. This thin waxing crescent is briefly and faintly visible as the moon gets lower in the western sky after sunset. So even here they tell you where to see it. And this matches what you just read in the book of Chanak. How can that be? Chanak was written, what, 6, 7, 8,000 years ago? How is it that he knew all of this and they're just coming to these conclusions? Check out the last one. A lunation or synodic month is the average time from one new moon to the next. In the J2000.0 epoch, the average length of a lunation is 29.530588 days, or 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes, and 2.8 seconds. However, the length of any one synodic month can vary from 29.26 is the 29-day month, to 29.80, that's your 30-day month. Days due to the perturbing effects of the sun's gravity on the moon's eccentric orbit. In a lunar calendar, each month corresponds to one lunation. Each lunar cycle can be assigned a unique lunation number to identify it. All right, look at this. Chanak, chapter 74, verse 12 to 14. So astronomy just told us that the moon has a deficiency. Let's see if Chanak tells us the same thing. Verse 12. And the sun and the stars bring in all the years exactly, so that they do not advance or delay their position by a single day unto eternity. The sun is stable. It remains the same. But complete the years with perfect justice in 364 days. The sun has 364 days every single year. Verse 13, in 3 years there are 1,092 days, and in 5 years 1,820 days, so that in 8 years there are 2,912 days. Verse 14, for the moon alone, the days amount in 3 years to 1,062 days, and in 5 years she falls behind the sun by 50 days. Look at the note. 354 times 3 equals 1062. How many days in the sun? 364. Subtract 1062 from 1092. Each one of these are 3 years for the sun, 3 years for the moon. You get a deficiency of 30 days. Each year, there's a deficiency of 10 days. Astronomy just told you that the moon has a deficiency. When you add it up over a 12-month period, you will have a deficiency every year of 10 days. Jubilees, chapter 6, verse 35 to 37. Let's get an education. Verse 35. For I know, and from henceforth will I declare it unto thee. And it is not of mine own devising, for the book lies written before me, and on the heavenly tablets the division of days is ordained, which means you cannot change them, lest they forget the feast of the covenant, and walk according to the feast of the Gentiles, after their error and after their ignorance. Who forgot the feast of the covenant? We did. 400 years of captivity have wiped us clean. But now the Father has revealed himself. And he's revealed himself in this book. He left it here so you could return. But you have to apply yourself. Who walked according to the feast of the Gentiles? We did. All of them. After their error and after their ignorance. See, ignorance, IGNOR, that means they ignored what was happening in the sky. They ignored what was happening in this book. They decided to go another route, and we followed them. Verse 36, for there will be those who will assuredly make observation of the moon, how it disturbs the seasons, and comes in from year to year 10 days too soon. What dictates the seasons? The sun. And what dictates your year? The sun. So they're going to look at the moon. They're going to say it's all over the place. It's confusing. We can't control it. But let's go to something that is stable, something we can control. What is that, Brother David? The sun. It remains the same every year. It doesn't change. So what they did was that they created a sun calendar. Hey, did you know that God, Ra-El, is the sun god? God, Ra-El, is the one who deceived Eve. That's Satan's true name. In Egypt, he went as Ra. He was the sun god. Do you remember the taunt that the Most High said to Satan when he cast him to the earth? How thou hast fallen, O son of the morning. So he took the sun to be the standard for his religion. Are you with me so far? Then it came down to his people who came from the north. And they were dealing with sun worship. Constantine the Great said that we're going to venerate the sun in our new religion. And he chose Christos Helios, the sun god. He created a sun calendar. And his worship day was on Sun's Day. Are you with me? So the Most High chose the moon for the sign of his days. Satan chose the sun for the sign of his days. You're not paying attention, are you? The one you choose is the one you follow. Verse 37. Look what's going to happen when they decide to change things. For this reason, the years will come upon them when they will disturb the order. And they're going to make an abominable day the day of testimony. Of course. Because if you don't start from the renewed moon to do your count, you're going to be totally off. And they're going to make an unclean day a feast day. Start from the dark moon, your feast days are unclean. If you start from the full moon, your feast days are unclean. If you start from the sun, your feast days are unclean. And they will confound all the days. Confound means confuse. What are they going to do? They're going to say, hey, the Sabbath starts at sunrise. Doesn't start in the evening. We're going to dismiss with that 12-hour period that comes before it. And we're just going to do from sunrise to sunset. And then the others are going to say, hey, we're going to start from sunrise to sunrise. In that day, you have the set apart day, half of it, mixed in with an unclean day. Everything is right here in Jubilees. Listen to what it's going to say in the end. This is very important. This is the key to get out of those doctrines. For they will go wrong. Who's going to go wrong? The children of the covenant. As to the months, stop. How is the month dictated? By the moon. Moon, in English, means month. Hebrew, Hadesh, renewed. They're going to go wrong as to the renewed months. Some are going to start from the dark moon. Some are going to start from the full moon. And then others are going to start from the slither of light, which is the only way. But if you add a 13th month to the calendar, now you're wrong again. And Sabbaths. The moon is the sign of feast, they say. Leviticus 23 tells you that the first feast day is your weekly Sabbath. Hello. And feast. 14th day in the evening, which is the 15th day for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The 15th day in the evening, dawning towards the first day of the week, is the Feast of Weeks. The 15th day for the Feast of Tabernacles. Do you know all of those days, the moon is waning. It's losing light. And Jubilees, 49-year period. We have to be in the land to carry that one out. You go wrong by following the sun. You go right by following the moon. Ecclesiasticus, chapter 43, verses 5 to 7. And we're going to be reading from the 1611 King James Version. Why are you doing that, Brother David? Because this book was originally inserted in the 1611 King James Version, the first Bible that appeared. Guess what else was there? Jubilees and Chanak. Who took it out? Those who would cover up the Most High's days. They can't let you see it for yourself. They know that you won't even seek it out in the regular King James Version that we have today. So for you to go back and check these apocryphal books, as they call them, will probably never happen. But they were wrong, weren't they? The righteous race has risen. And we know the unification of Scripture. Verse 5, great is Yahweh that made it. Made what? The sun. I want you to read verse 1 to 4. He first speaks about the sun. No place did he say that he chose the sun for a sign of his Sabbaths or his feast days. Do you understand me? And at his commandment it runneth hastily. Verse 6. He made the moon also to serve in her season. Hey, Brother David, why did he make the moon to serve in her season? For a declaration of times. Tell me something. What declares time? He made the moon also to serve in her season for a declaration of times. Yah's time is on the moon. And a sign of the world. The whole world can see this. It's not hidden. But who looks up these days, right? Look in verse 7. This is extraordinary to me. From the moon is the sign of feast. How many times do we see sign, 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 sign all over the place? This is your mark that'll be in your forehead if you're keeping his days. It is a sign to him that you belong to him. If you don't have this sign, you will not make it in. But look at this word, the. You know what that means? It's the definite article. You have to have reading comprehension. The moon is the sign, the only sign that you look for the feast. You don't look for the sun. If you do that, you're following Satan and his minions. Satan chose the sun. Yah's choice was the moon. So the only choice that Satan had was to choose the sun, correct? And he said, I'm going to outshine the Most High. Did that work? Yeah, we've been following the sun calendar for all of our life. That's why it's hard for us to make adjustments to go back to the way it originally was meant to work. A light that decreaseth in her perfection. 14th day in the evening, which is the 15th day, that's your Feast of Unleavened Bread, the light is decreasing. The 15th day in the evening, which is your Feast of Weeks, the light is decreasing. The 15th day for the Feast of Tabernacles, the light is decreasing. All of your feast days, which come in the middle of the month, which is the 15th or the 15th in the evening, the light is decreasing from the full moon. So how do you start your month from the full moon? Scripture, especially when you know how to find the witnesses, like I've showed you here, will always lead you to the truth, unless you dismiss it. Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. You're witnessing a symphony of Scripture. They all have different instruments. The analogy is different books, but they're all playing the same tune. You know something else I've learned? That our brothers, the Europeans, all of them, they don't have reading comprehension. Maybe because our people just read commentaries. They don't study for themselves. Matter of fact, I'm sure now that our people don't know how to study. But what they say is that the Most High created these lights, the sun and the moon, on the fourth day of creation. That is stupidity. If you go to Genesis chapter 1, it tells you, in the beginning, the Elohim created the heavens and the earth. Then the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the deep. So, listen, the heavens were created, the earth was created. In the first working day, guess what happened? The Elohim said, turn on the lights, and the lights came on. Read it for yourself. Verse 14. And the Elohim said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night. There was no creation going on here. He's telling you what he created them for. And let them be for, there's that word again, signs. What's your sign and feast? The moon. And for seasons. What dictates the seasons? The sun. And for days. What dictates the days? Remember, he created the moon to serve in her season for a declaration of time. You can actually see the time grow on the moon. And for years. 364 days. Now, if Yah says, this is what he created these orbs for, who do you follow? These brothers or the Most High? Do you see any Gregorian calendar here? It doesn't exist. Yashayahu, chapter 66, verse 23 to 24. Verse 23. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another. How does that work? The word is Hadesh, means renewed. So from one renewed moon to the next renewed moon. Where's the Gregorian calendar? Okay. I want to see how, if any of you who believes in that Gregorian calendar for your Sabbaths, where is the Gregorian calendar when he shows up? Huh? It should be still present. He says from one renewed moon to another. He doesn't count his days on that calendar. And from one Sabbath to another. The Sabbath is on the renewed moon calendar in the sky for the whole world to see. You can see the quarters, the full, the dark. Everything works out perfectly. Shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith Yahuwah. Who chose the time for you to come and worship before him? He did. And if you choose another time and decide that you know something, look what's going to happen to you. Verse 24. And they shall go forth. Who's going to go forth? The elect, the chosen ones. And look upon the carcasses of the men that have transgressed against him. Aren't you afraid? I am afraid. You have to be able to correct yourself. A brother, I believe it's InfoNet. This morning I woke up getting ready to start my studies and my work. And I looked on the channel and the brother says, hey, you're not supposed to put any images on the channel. And I said, what image? And I went looking and I said, oh my goodness. I had this image on there from 7 years ago when I first started the channel. Guess what I did? I took it off immediately. You have to be able to correct yourself. I don't see any problem with correcting yourself. But some of us can't. So on this day, you're going to walk past the lake of fire and you're going to see all the men that did not correct themselves. For their worm shall not die. The flesh shall burn away, but the soul and the spirit shall remain. Neither shall their fire be quenched. And they shall be an abhorring unto all flesh. The women are going to cover their faces. They don't want to see this. Some of your family members will be there. You know, the ones you witnessed to. The ones that you were trying to tell the Most High's name is Yahuwah. The ones that you were trying to tell that his Sabbaths and his feast days are in the sky. And they frowned at you. They called you all kinds of names. You're crazy. You're an idiot. You're an airhead. Those are the ones you're going to look upon. The ones who deny his law, you're going to look upon them. You will know them because they cannot change. Let me ask you one more question before we close this part out. in verse 23. Can you get the Gregorian calendar out of that? Can you get a sun calendar out of this? If you follow Yah, you're on point. If you follow men, in that day, for all of us who have overcome, we're going to get a chance to see what you're going through in the lake of fire. Why is Yah going to do that? So you can see what you missed, and it'll be a deterrent for transgressing the law. Continue to part 3. Let me show you the scriptures that these brothers use that's going to lead our people to the lake of fire. Shalom.